match up perfectly with the Gilded Age, because the Gilded Age is roughly 1870, 1880, 1900. But you can still see some similarities with regards to the income distribution. As you watch this clip, if you replace the word railroad with internet, or maybe in the tomorrow's clip, if you replace Standard Oil with Amazon, there are some similarities, okay? Mark Twain says history doesn't repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes. So something to that effect. And you can see history repeating itself right now in some ways. And so I want you to watch this and learn from it so that you can navigate the future. This video is about, we're going to watch about today. It's 2 hours long total, so you'll definitely be watching some tomorrow, and then I'm not sure how much I'll make you on the next day watch. I know you guys will get over it eventually. So anyway, that's the plan for the week, and I hope you enjoy.
A vicious cold snap hit New York in the first week of February 1897. But nothing could slow the preparations for the impending revelry. The city's wealthiest citizens were readying themselves for one of the most anticipated balls in the nation's history. An extravagant exclamation point on what would come to be known as the Gilded Age.
During the Gilded Age, Americans feel quite certainly that they are the vanguard of civilization and progress. There's an enormous period of opportunity and possibility and hope.
No group felt more confident about the future than the guests who would gather for the party at the luxurious Waldorf Hotel. The evening's total price tag, according to newspaper reports, was enough to feed nearly 1,000 working-class families for a full year. Defenders noted that the ball stood to benefit the entire city. Critics begged to differ. With all the people, warned one minister, who have to lie awake nights contriving to spend their time and their money, and all the others who lie awake wondering how they may get food, there is danger in the air.
It was a fractious time in which a sense of desperation amidst growing wealth was emerging.
Increasingly, workers begin to say, if I, as a member of this society, lack the ability to pay my bills and to feed my family, then I am not a free citizen of a healthy republic. I'm something else, something that the Founding Fathers would not recognize.
The magnitude of the late 19th century transformation of American society is hard to exaggerate. It was as if you woke up in one country and you went to bed in another.
30 years after the Civil War, America had transformed into an economic powerhouse. But the transformation had created stark new divides in wealth, standing, and opportunity.
It's shocking for people to see a country developing before them that is increasingly clearly divided into the haves and have-nots.
Gilded is not golden. Gilded has the sense of a patina covering something else. It's the shiny exterior and the rot underneath.
By the time New York's elite gathered at the Waldorf Ballroom, the richest 4,000 families in the country, less than 1% of all Americans, had scooped up nearly as much treasure as the other 11.6 million families combined. "We are the rich," one partygoer remarked. "We own America. We got it, God knows how, but we intend to keep it if we can."
There is this fight over what is America's collective self-identity? Who are we? Are we two nations, the poor and the wealthy? Or are we one nation where everybody has a chance to succeed.
When this nation comes out of the Civil War, we are still a nation divided by regions. There's very little national market. If you need a pair of shoes, you don't get it from a factory 100 miles away. You get it from the local shoe maker.
Life was much, much more local, much more what was going on right around you, what your neighbors were doing, what your friends were doing, what your enemies were doing, and how you were doing on a day-to-day basis.
America had been founded, its political system had been founded for a country of farmers. But it was becoming a nation of industrialists, becoming a nation of urban workers. It was becoming a nation of cities. Railroads knit the entire country together in a way that hadn't existed before. So now, merchants, manufacturers, industrialists can think nationally. You don't have to think simply in terms of your local market. If you have a good idea, if you have a good procedure for producing something, you can think of selling your goods all over the country.
By the early 1880s, the nation's largest corporation, the Pennsylvania Railroad, carried more than 2 million tons of industrial and consumer goods every year. Steel left mills in Pittsburgh for destinations around the country. So too did refined oil from Cleveland, factory-made furniture from Cincinnati, and harvesters from Chicago. Railroads moved coal from Wyoming, timber from Oregon, silver from Nevada and Colorado, and copper from Montana. Tens of thousands of young men and women from farm families could hop on the train to go where the jobs were, the newly industrializing cities. Former slaves and their children joined the urban migration, bound for new opportunities in Memphis, Atlanta, Richmond, or as far north as Philadelphia and New York.
The hope is for equality and for first-class citizenship, and to be a part of what is happening in terms of progress and change. They're trying to make the democracy and the country work for them.
Progress is part of the American credo and has been almost from the beginning of the nation. Americans prided themselves on their inventiveness, their ingenuity, their entrepreneurial get up and go.
Progress is thought of as inevitable. It's divinely inspired. There's a pastor who talked about these technological innovations as God's tools to make a more perfect society. And so it becomes almost a spiritual idea, this industrial spirit.
One of the most innovative entrepreneurs of the day was Andrew Carnegie. He owned a stable full of fine-blooded horses and enjoyed taking long rides through Central Park. In the spring of 1881, he was a man in the saddle in all ways, having just consolidated his growing manufacturing enterprises under a single banner, Carnegie Brothers and Company. Some days, Carnegie would ride out of the park and head north on Upper Broadway. Other days, he would ride all the way to the High Bridge, where traffic loosened and he could open up to a gallop along the banks of the Harlem River. In the few hours he was out riding through New York, his blast furnaces 300 miles to the west produced more than 60 tons of steel and earned him about as much as the average American made in a year. This remarkable and novel fact made 45-year-old Andrew Carnegie the emblem of a new kind of American dream. Like John D. Rockefeller in the oil refining business and Cornelius Vanderbilt in railroads, Carnegie was riding a wave of industrialization, using new technology and mass production to secure enormous personal wealth.
What's important to realize is that these men, they have visions. Carnegie, Rockefeller, the railroad barons, they don't invent anything. They're managers.
Carnegie is one of the few American millionaires of this era or any other who can genuinely call himself a self-made man. He really does come from humble origins.